just start the recording. And shall I share the screen first? Is that what you'd like?
Yeah, go ahead.
There we are. Now everybody knows, yeah, that you're in charge of your own Zoom screen. So if you want to see more, you want to see Chris big screen, then you click on Chris as speaker. You know, I'm sure everybody's very familiar now with how to work their Zooms. So everybody's screen share okay? You can all see that?
I can see it really clearly, Joanne.
Great stuff. Away you go, Chris.
Thank you. So thanks everybody for turning up tonight. I'm sure you've got loads of other things you could have been doing, but you're here with us. That's fantastic. And this tiny little presentation here is just for talking points. There's nothing intrinsic about it. There's the video spotlighted of me. Gosh, how nervous.
Okay, so I'll cancel that. Okay.
Nah, it's fine. I'm fine with it. I'm just joking around with you. So this is just to introduce the title of the book, which you all know by this stage, but also the subtitle of the book, which is Exploring the Way of Shiatsu. We wanted that to be in there, so it was clear what this book was about, but that we also had an angle that we wanted to bring forth the intangible, the thing, the realms that Shiatsu brings into our life that we can't touch in terms of scientific instruments recording what we do yet. Soon that day will come when they can, but we're not quite there yet. So we're relying on our own sensory perception and learning to trust that sensory perception, which is a journey in itself. And exploring the way of Shiatsu is to do with that, exploring all the avenues, exploring all the byways, exploring all the different aspects that we're presented with in our training, but then that we encounter in our practice and in our everyday lives. So we could go to the next slide pretty much straight away, I guess, Jan. And there's the title of the book, and just Lena will recognize this. They used to call us the Three Musketeers because we were holding these classes together. So now I want to talk about my co-writers. And I'm not sure if we can't see their names on this page for some reason. There we can, there we go. So Jeremy Halpin and Jan Nevelius, big shout out to those guys. You'll see a picture of them in a minute. And my training was in Japan. It started in China, but it was mainly in Japan and England and all over China. And then I came back to Europe after like about 5 years of studying over there. And my education continued, not just with patients, but also with inviting people to come here to Sweden to teach for me. So you've probably heard names like David Ventura, Patrizia Stefanini, and Franz Koppers. These are the kind of people I had come over here and teach. So I continued to learn from them. But then I got into contact with these two guys and we started to run this education together. Jeremy started the whole thing. Jan jumped in and I came in and more or less took it over. That's just the way things happen sometimes. And the privilege was immense to work with these guys. And then we started doing these summer courses where we could actually be inside each other's courses and learning from each other in situ and hearing what kind of words these guys use, what kind of techniques they present, how they teach, what kind of perspectives they bring. And of course, their specific way of touching and pressure and stretch and all the rest of it, all the techniques. So it was like an education again, all over again. And we found ourselves in a situation where we had an awful lot of material and some of it was in note form, but absolutely useless to publish. We couldn't possibly publish that for various reasons, one of which was legibility and the other was copyright. So Jan decided that we should write a book and we all thought, how on earth do you do that? And Joanne has already raised the question of writing is difficult enough. Where do you find the time to write? Writing as a threesome is basically impossible. So what we did is we were interviewed by our students, beginning with one person and then she left, she got sick of us. And another person came in, she managed to burn herself out. And then a third person came in and she pulled it all the way through. And big shout out to those three women. And they're all credited on my Facebook page with posts about a month ago now, maybe more. So huge thanks to them for helping us do that. And then we got transcripts home and then we wrote out from the transcripts and then we rewrote every single word about 10 times until we were very, very slowly and gradually happy with what we had, even though we didn't know what we had really. And we're just amazed by the responses we've been getting from people because anybody will tell you, by the time you're ready to put a book out, you don't know what's in it. You've got no idea what it's like. You've completely lost perspective, and you just have to put it out there and hope for the best. So that's what we did. And the artwork, as you'll see, some of you have mentioned that, and that was really, really important for us from the very beginning. We wanted a book that would be lovely to hold, beautiful to look at, and you would be able to wander around it in whichever way you wanted to, from the back, from the front, randomly, from the middle, anywhere. Read it forwards, backwards, sideways. We wanted that kind of choice, that people could have their way of reading this book, their way of touching what we were presenting and interacting with it on their own terms, at their own pace. And we wanted a visual element, and we were exploring all sorts of different ways. And then Jeremy brought in this woman called Maria Sandberg, and she was a graphic artist who was, fortunately for us, out of work at the time and looking for a project. So we were her project, and she created these amazing images for us using Jan's photography, but combining it, photo montage, photoshopping it together with other images from nature, from the world at large, and creating, with great painstaking effort, things that actually pointed the chapter in the kind of direction we wanted them to go in. So it's really, really difficult to do. It's so abstract to say, oh, we want to suggest this with an image. How do you do that? Well, she did it, and we're just entirely grateful for her for doing that. That on the front is just typical of her sensibility and the kind of poetry that she brought to the whole thing. So top marks for her. Maybe we could go to the next image, and these questions, you can just think about them for a moment. This is just completely irrelevant stuff, actually, but that's a book, that's a picture that one of my students took. He just got the book and he was so happy to have it. Bang, that came. So I thought, well, put that magic in there as well. We can go on to the next one. It's no problem. I'd forgotten that was there, to be honest. Now, here we have the guys. There's me in the middle, and that's Jan with the blue t-shirt and Jeremy with the white t-shirt. I'm looking a bit moody, actually, looking a bit pop starish. He is a pop star, actually. He's in a band and he's been an actor. He's been all sorts of things. Jan is an Aikido master of very high rank. He's a 7th Dan, which is completely unheard of for a foreigner to get. Usually only Japanese people can get that rank. And the reason is that it's not to do with technique, it's to do with honor and service. And Jan has served the Aikido community so selflessly for so long that they gave him that honorary degree. And there you have it. There's my two co-musketeers, and that stuff is on the back of the book. So that's the backstory to the whole thing. And yeah, once you buy the book, if you buy the book, that'll be there for you. This image here, Maria put together for us. Those are my thumbs, actually, funnily enough, and my fingers on probably Jeremy's back, I'm guessing. She put all those mountains and trees in the background to give that suggestion of physicality, because Shiatsu is, above all, it represents that Eastern method of approaching the spiritual through the physical, and never, ever ignoring the body, because we've decided for one reason or another, or many, many reasons probably, or each and every one of us, to incarnate. That means to put ourselves in this flesh and to experience this life on earth, and all the riches and all the challenges that it entails. So we wanted that physical part to come first, and that's a very early chapter in the book. It's chapter 2, if my memory serves correctly. We wanted to go through that because Shiatsu begins and ends with the physical. You touch somebody and that sets off a cascade of physical effects, and some of them are immediate. And Shiatsu has gotten this reputation as being an excellent therapy that works in a kind of long-term basis for chronic illness and stuff like this. But I really want to set the record straight. That's true, and it's not true. Shiatsu works immediately as well. You just have to set your mind into that focus, and your Shiatsu will work immediately. You just have to think, put, touch, focus, tune in. We'll do a little bit of that later on, just to kind of give you a few hints about that. So we should never forget that Shiatsu has all these amazing, amazing immediate effects. And I'm sure you're all nodding and thinking, yeah, that's right, that's true. I've noticed that. Some of those effects are in the sense that they are visible. You can see them as you touch a point, or you get a connection going from 2 points or 2 places on the back or something. You'll see effects rippling through the body. So you have a visible thing that you can actually work with, and you can use it to take you through the treatments as a kind of guide. And I do that a lot. Something I work with an awful lot. You can also hear it when people breathe in special ways. You can hear them sighing or yawning. You can hear in their voice how they're starting to work towards a difficult subject, how they hesitate. And as they start to unplug that subject and move through it, they'll talk faster, more fluently, more freely with emotion, etc., etc. So all of these things that we touch in Shiatsu, some of them are completely invisible and intangible. A lot of them are not. A lot of them are really right there for you to see and hear and register with your regular five senses. Now, we know that the sixth and seventh and eighth senses are much more interesting for a lot of us. And so that's where we want to get to, of course. But it begins and it ends with Shiatsu physical effects. And if and when the day comes when any of you people want to start doing research, then get ready to start listing the physical effects of Shiatsu and start finding ways to gauge them and to have people measure them in different ways with hormones or neurotransmitter signals or whatever it might be. So enough on the physical effects. Let's go to the role of the therapist. Of course, that's me sitting there again. That's funny. That person lying down there is Philippa, and she was the person who helped us bring this into full fruition. She helped us literally cut and paste it into the form, more or less, that it has now. And she did that with her trusty scissors and bits of tape and some of those underlining pens you have when you're a student. And we actually did sit on the floor of this clinic that you can see behind me and cut several chapters up and put them together into one. So incredible hands-on person, the will of an ox, but a sensibility goes way beyond that. She's been a fellow researcher of mine for like 10 years now and really contributed to a lot of the work that I do nowadays. So hats off, big shout out to Philippa Fried if she's with us tonight. Howdy. The role of the therapist, of course, is massive and it's multidimensional. I'm sure you're all very well aware of that you'll shift and change, not just with different people, but during the same treatment with the same person. And of course, we have to be very aware of the boundaries and the barriers and where to step and where not to step. And that's part of the sensibility that we do get with experience and with our fine-tuning our senses. When you can go in and touch a subject verbally, maybe, when you should maybe back off very slightly and give the person a little bit of breathing room before they're ready to tackle it. Things like that are really, really important. So one of our roles is to hold the space and monitor the space so that we're sensitive to the ongoing process and its stages and phases. One of the most important things a therapist can do, of course, is listen. And if you look at that picture, you'll see that presence in the background there is supposed to, in a sense, underline that part of it, the passive active part of listening to people, because people can go through their life and really not be listened to, not be heard at all, always in the background, always taking second or third place, almost invisible. And to have your voice heard by somebody who's giving you their complete attention is a magnificent thing. And it's a thing that breaks all sorts of barriers and unleashes all sorts of potential. And there's a very, very special alchemy with hearing yourself say something with conviction and then knowing that it's true and moving into the space that opens up for you. And you've all experienced it as patients. I'm sure I've experienced it several times. And I've experienced the opposite as well. When a therapist doesn't give you space to think for yourself and express your truth exactly as you would like to, it's kind of like being bound and gagged all over again. And it really doesn't help. So that interaction of actually really listening actively to somebody, letting them finish their sentence, letting them have a little pause after they've said it, waiting and just to see if there's something else wanting to come out there, or if not, then adding your piece to help them along in their expression. And I think that one of our roles is, to give advice for sure. But before we give advice, to listen and see whether the advice can come from them. Because a lot of times people can tell you very, very clearly and very easily what it is that's bugging them, what they might be able to do about it. So if you just give them space and encourage them and put questions around that to frame their situation in a new way, they can often find the way themselves to a new phase and a new step on their pathway. So there's tons of things we could say about the therapist's role, of course. That's never ending. And you'll find yourself moving into all sorts of different types of roles as you move into the fully full-fledged power of the therapist's role is from the most passive to the most active and everything in between. One day you'll be a confessor hearing people's almost inadmissible things that they've done and that they're almost ashamed to tell anybody else. They're certainly embarrassed to tell their wife or husband or the people at work. They've maybe never told anybody else before what they're telling you. And the amount of power and confidence that you get from that is massive, of course. And then you have to embrace your own humility and the enormous confidence of the treatment room for them to be able to carry on sharing with you. Another time you'll be like somebody's brother or sister. Another time you'll be like one of their relatives. Another time you'll be just like a friend and just chit-chatting, waiting for the big breakthrough to come and keeping them calm, keeping them in a good mood. I like to make people laugh. I like to crack jokes with them and just talk about cinema and music and stuff like that, just to get people relaxed, and then they can start telling you the important stuff in their own time. In recent years, a lot of us have found out that we're tending towards roles which would be more commonly associated with shamans and things like this, spiritual people of the earth, people of spirit, people who do inner journey work, stuff like that. Some of you probably do that kind of stuff in other functions when you're not even doing shiatsu. And I think that a lot of us wander into that territory without perhaps thinking that we'll end up there, but anyway, ending up there. And I think we should embrace that. Absolutely. I do, for sure. You don't need to force it. Just allow it to come along. And as it comes along, allow it to show you some of the pathways you might want to start looking at, some of the literature you might want to start reading, certain type of courses that you might want to go with certain types of practitioners who may or may not be shiatsu practitioners. You might want to get into the spirit of the points, because that's a huge area that I've been investigating for the last 20, 30 years. The language of acupuncture, the language of shiatsu, the language of Oriental medicine is so rich, and it doesn't stop. It never, ever stops, because you can keep investigating. One day you'll be looking at lung 2, and you'll suddenly realize that that point is called cloud gate. What the hell does cloud gate mean? What could it possibly mean? Well, the first thing you think of course, is that the lungs are supposed to be part of the upper heater, where the mists and the clouds are. We don't want any heavy liquids or solids up in the lung area, because that we're talking about serious problems, right? We don't want phlegm up there. We don't want tar up there. We don't want heavy emotions of grief or sorrow in the lungs. We want clouds moving freely and shape shifting all the time. So that's just one example. And some of you have your own favorite points with really remarkable names that you can think about for years and years and years. I have a whole group of people around me on Wednesdays. We Zoom once a week, and they're like becoming experts at this and teaching me new stuff now. So that thing about becoming what used to be called holy people or priestesses or shamans, don't be shy about that. Don't be nervous about it. Just move in your own pace and allow that to welcome you in. And who knows, maybe you've been a shaman before in a previous time around. Most of you probably have, actually, if you think about it. So that was a therapist. Do we have anything else to look at? Yeah, sure we do. What have we got? The client. Well, of course, there's always two sides to every story. We're taught that in our very first lesson. And when we look at the way clients or patients are treated in what's become allopathic medicine, we recoil from it, because we realize that a lot of the mechanisms of allopathic medicine are there to disempower people. And we don't like that. We don't like that at all. We don't like that one bit. And what we do is we empower people. Everything we do is to empower them, to help them become the person they have the potential to become. And a lot of that's invisible, because it is still potential. And going back to the therapist just for a moment, one of your roles, and somebody reminded me of this today, is to see potential and to love the client completely, even if they're quite despicable people and have really done nothing with their life and have terrible habits. Your job is not to criticize. Your job is to love them and to help them find their platform to move forwards. The client can be quite passive at the beginning of this session, because usually they've learned to be passive. They've been indoctrinated that passivity is what is required of them. They're told repeatedly from the minute they're from the cradle to the grave, more or less, that they are quite ignorant about their bodies, about their minds, about their emotions, about their behavioral patterns, about the way they think. Our job is to tell them the opposite is true. Empower them to really understand, to come into their power, that everything they do, they can begin to look at in a different way, to begin to influence, to begin to steer in a different way, and to, well, let's say, start to get the controls back, right? So whereas a doctor will give somebody 15 minutes and basically tell them what's wrong with them, we ask what's wrong with them. We listen to their stories. And if their story takes half an hour to tell, we listen and we're entertained by it. We interject with questions to give them even more impetus to tell us more. We ask the client what they would like to be doing, why they would like to come for this treatment, what kind of things they're interested in addressing. And each time they come, you can ask them again, because something will have changed and they'll be looking at new things, hopefully, some small, some big. And one of my tricks is to completely forget who it is that I'm treating. Oh, what are you here for again? So some of them get a little bit annoyed. Well, I told you I was, yeah, all right, yeah. But what else? What's happened since we last saw each other? And one of my favorite questions, and I say this to just about everybody who comes, when I feel they're receptive to it. Any interesting dreams recently? You dream about anything lately since we last saw each other? And everybody has something to report about that. It doesn't matter. And most of you dream at least 3 or 4 times a week. And occasionally you'll have a dream that really sticks out and will tell you something. And to tell that to a therapist, or especially a shiatsu therapist, is just gold. And you can work for hours on that, really, literally. What else can the client do? The client can explain to you things that you don't know. It can teach you all about things that you thought you did know. For example, a symptom or a syndrome or a disease or a medication. So a very smart thing to do, I find, is when people come and tell you, oh, I've got fibromyalgia. You say, oh, what does that mean? And they'll tell you what it means. But usually what they'll do is give you the doctor's diagnosis. And you'll just shake your head and say, oh, that's completely uninteresting. What do you think it means? And what does it mean for you? How does it manifest in your life? How have you experienced it? Okay, and what kind of medications you want? What kind of things have you done for that? Oh, that's cool, that's interesting. Let them tell you what fibromyalgia is. And if they're taking medicines, let them tell you what those medicines are for, what they do. How do you experience that? Are there any kind of effects you do like or don't like about it? How long does it seem to do? They can give you all sorts of information about themselves and, of course, about you. A lot of this stuff is about mirroring, and we can't get away from the fact that we do shiatsu for ourselves. People get shocked when I say that sometimes. I do shiatsu for myself. Joanne's smiling, that's good. If you don't realize that, you're in for a very bumpy ride. The minute you realize it, everything's plain sailing, because nothing can happen that will faze you. You know you're doing this for yourself. So if you have a troublesome client, or a client who's not getting better, or a client who's showing you things you've never seen before, yes, it's for you. It's for you to learn about yourself, about life, about you, everything that you came here to do. So if you remember that you're doing shiatsu for yourself, the risk of getting burnt out or bored or like phased decreases to a much, much lower degree. And then you can kind of take the rough parts, the bumps in the road, with just a smile and a shrug of the shoulders, and like, oh yeah, well, okay, since I'm doing this for myself anyway, it doesn't really matter, does it? The byproduct of doing it for yourself and knowing that you're doing it for yourself is that you're able much more easily to share and to be there for somebody, because, well, you know, you've got so much to win. It's win-win all the way through. In fact, it's win-win-win, because it just keeps bouncing back, like one of those old ping pong games that we had in the 70s, those first computer games. It just keeps bouncing back and bouncing back, and you just keep getting renewed by this exchange that you're continually a part of, this flowering, this unfolding. We used that picture there because it showed somebody doing something active for themselves. So we like clients to become active, right? We like clients who are so empowered that they start to do things for themselves. It doesn't matter what it is. This is Tai Chi you're seeing, Qigong you're seeing here, but it doesn't have to be Qigong, right? It could be anything. It could be basket weaving. It could be painting. It could be just walking other people's dogs. It could be visiting their grandchildren a bit more often. It could be just hugging a tree every now and then, or just telling people what they really think about stuff, or not, as the case may be. And that picture was taken by Jan, as was the hand picture. Again, those are my hand in the middle, and those are Jeremy's hands at the side, if I remember correctly. That picture was taken on the beach in Gotland, which is an island off the coast of Sweden. Lina knows it pretty well, probably. And we did our summer courses out there and learned a lot about each other and about what we also were interested in. We really encouraged each other to treat those courses as a kind of laboratory. We had a theme, and the theme was a kind of a loose structure around us. And within that theme, we just presented the things we wanted to, what was bubbling in our lives at the moment, our latest things, crazy stuff that we were researching or that we had in dreams and stuff like that. So it was a very liberating and strengthening experience for us as people, as teachers, as men, of course, and real fun, great fun. So you can see that's kind of like a holiday picture there. That was a sunset, gorgeous pink, orange sunset. What else we got, Joanne? Chi. Talk about touching the invisible, huh? Again, one of Jan's pictures. These are the arms of Ulrika, a student and friend of ours, Ulrika Bengtsson. I guess Lena knows her. And what Maria did is put this picture of fire. This is flame, and this is smoke and mist behind, to just suggest the immutable, the ineffable, the part that can't be touched, with the part that can be touched. So through these practices of mobilizing and generating and flowing energy, we have the ability to also move into the invisible realms. And the quicker we acknowledge it, the better. And the more our teachers can empower us to, in a sense, embrace that and to feel comfortable with it in all of its aspects, the better. And the faster we move through into feeling that we can really research these areas and use our tools in everyday life to understand all of these invisible aspects of life. Most of you are familiar with the model called the three treasures, and we're going to be looking at that later on in a little practice. And the three treasures are called Jing, which means the essence, the physical essence, almost the sexual essence of the body, but the physical essence of the person, which also connotes a connection with our ancestors and the energy which we are passing down as we incarnate through our parents and they through their parents, etc., etc. So Jing is like that, the sum total of the physical aspect of our being. That's the base, the heaviest, the dense treasure at the bottom, as it were, the lower one. In the middle, we have this thing called Qi, and Qi is in the middle because Qi is the pathway to every kind of transformation. So Qi is within everything. Everything that is has Qi, but some Qi moves faster and some Qi moves slower, and that's the simple truth. So your thoughts at the moment, as you wonder what on earth I'm talking about, are moving pretty fast, whereas your bottoms sitting on your chair and your feet on the ground are moving a lot slower because they're made up of much denser kinds of Qi. That's closer to Jing, in fact. Whereas your spiritual aspirations and your exertions in the spiritual realms are a much higher, more etheric frequency of Qi. When I say higher, I don't mean better. I simply mean faster. We're talking about speed of frequency. So if somebody wants to talk about physics, this is the place to talk about it. The speed of the movement of Qi creates the frequencies, and that moves us up and down through these different levels of work. The highest level of the three treasures is Shen. And Shen, most of us translate as spirit. Some people translate as mind. That's not my favorite translation. I prefer spirit, actually, because it is really out there. And it really says that what we do is spiritual work as well. We don't just do energy work, and we don't just do physical work. We do spiritual work. And then the quicker we can embrace that, the faster we can move on. And everything makes much more sense. So three treasures take us through the physical into the spiritual. And Qi is like the interface in between, where anything is possible. Everything can change into everything else. The world of Qi is the world of possibilities, and they are infinite. The 10,000 things, etc., etc. So of course we had to have a chapter on Qi. And in that chapter, we talk about all the different aspects that we could think of that were useful, and all the aspects that our students could think of to ask us about it. And some of those are directly therapeutic. Some of them are much more philosophical. Some of them are to do with everyday life. Some of them are to do with Shiatsu on the mat and the way people transform and the way people don't transform and why that might be. There will be some questions afterwards about this, I'm sure. It's a massive topic. Moving on, Joanne. We have the 5 elements, of course. And that picture there, again, it's a pair of hands and one of those typical Shiatsu pictures from Jan. Again, Jan Nevelius took all these pictures. that picture there of the butterfly was to suggest transformation, of course, and the 5 elements. I really actually don't like the word 5 elements. I much prefer 5 movements. Even 5 phases or 5 transformations can do it for me, but 5 elements doesn't do it. And the reason is that elements sounds too static. And I'm sure you will know what I mean by that, because the essence of the model is dynamic transformation. We see it during the one day, we see it during the seasons of the year, and we see it through a lifetime, how these elements swap and change into each other, move into each other. And that's more like the circular progression of things, but we also see it in all sorts of different ways. And a lot of you are very familiar with the star, the harmonic star within the circle, where things are balanced and harmonized between the elements, so nobody gets too big for their boots and everybody gets to say, everybody gets to do what they're good at, which is something that we love in Shiatsu, right? Doing what you're good at and not being forced to do stuff you're not good at. Sound nice? So what we like about the 5 elements is you can play around with them in many, many different ways. And the slightly less controversial thing that I want to say about the 5 elements is that I use them more often as a cross with wings than I do the circle and the star. And that's just the way I am. And the reason I like that so much, and it puts earth in the middle, it puts fire at the top, fire burns upwards, puts water at the bottom, because water always runs downwards, collects downwards. And it gives you these 2 beautiful wings, metal and wood, and it puts them against each other in a really interesting way, I think. And that counterbalance of the wood and the tree and the metal is one of the things I most enjoy working with. So that polarity, I work a lot with that. And when you put the elements into their cross form, it really brings that out. And where it brings it out most clearly for me is the 5 spirits. So when I teach the 5 elements, I usually teach the 5 spirits as a way of teaching the 5 elements. Because for me, it doesn't get clearer than talking about Shen as the most ethereal at the top, and Je, the will to survive, the endurance power of the person to reach the end of their journey, at the bottom. That's the basis. And at the side on the wings, we have the 2 souls, the spiritual soul, the etheric soul, the Hun, floating on its cloud, and we have the white soul of the body of the pole. And that, all of that centering around the Yi, where thought and transformation and assimilation and digestion goes on. That's just a beautiful image to work with. And I find it makes a lot of sense when you're working with people. And it's very, very easy to explain it. Even patients can understand it in like 10 minutes. It's really easy. You can write the diagram and people have got it. It's basically, oh, okay, fine, brilliant. The more controversial thing I want to say about the 5 elements, put your safety belt on now, people, crash helmet, please. A couple of tranquilizers at hand in case you get shocked by this. For me, the pericardium and the triple heater do not belong to the fire element. They work in between the fire and the water element, and even between the wood and the metal element. They are like the emulsifying agents that connect and link everything together. It's no coincidence that triple heater 5 opens the yang wei mai, and pericardium 6 opens the yin wei mai, the linking vessels themselves. If you look at the law vessels, for example, now I'm talking a little bit technical stuff for some people maybe, but most of you will probably be able to get this. If you look at the law vessels of the triple heater and pericardium, you'll see that they are systemic. They're not specific. So the triple heater will contribute to all of the fluid metabolism and all of the warmth and the cooling systems of the body for every single organ and every cell of your body. And the pericardium will do the same thing on an internal level. Pericardium more related to blood, triple heater more to qi perhaps, triple heater more towards the water element and more towards the wei qi, pericardium more towards the heart and the blood. All of that, absolutely true. But if you put them in the middle in an infinity cycle and you set them free from the 5 elements, they begin to be these amazing, amazing creators of transformation in your treatments. So that's just a tip. And we may do a little bit of work with that later on if we get a couple of minutes. We'll see what Jan thinks about that. So moving on, folks. Let's see what we got. I can't even remember what I put on here. Of course, diagnosis. Now, I don't want to go on and on about diagnosis because you've heard that 1,000 times from all your different teachers, and that's great. What I do want to say is that diagnosis is an endless journey, and it's a personal journey. And the more personal you can make it, the better. What Jeremy's hands are showing you there is that diagnosis is the way in. It's like an entrance way. It's an entranceway into your patient's world. So diagnosis is simply a key that helps you unlock part of their world. And once you're in, you're in. And you can forget all about the technicalities of diagnosis. You're in their field, you're in their world. You just enjoy the mosaic that they present for you, the artwork that they are as a person. So we're all like warmly in agreement that diagnosis is actually just a way in. It doesn't, you don't have to like strictly adhere to any principles of this or that, or think that this diagnosis is better than that diagnosis, or you have to do this or you have to do that. No, you don't have to do anything. In fact, more and more often I'm doing nothing at all in terms of diagnosis. Just sitting there, breathing with the person and listening, and oh, that's cool. I think I'll do what I usually do anyway. But you do it in a way that suits that person because it's in that moment with them. The alchemy of the moment is the most important thing. So I usually say to people, to boil it down, Shiatsu consists of two things: intuition and common sense. And if you don't have any common sense, you won't be able to do Shiatsu. But if you don't have any intuition, your Shiatsu will be a bit boring. It won't be as exciting as it could be. And you'll get to where you want to go much, much faster if you can use your intuition. But don't ever forget your common sense. The other thing I like to say about Shiatsu is there's three components to any Shiatsu session. Three most important ones are the client, of course, the therapist, and the moment itself, the meeting within the moment, because that will give you everything you need. And you can actually temporarily forget all your skills, all the techniques, all the technicalities, and just be there in the moment. And you'll know what to do, even if you don't know what it is. You'll be guided to do what you need to do. And it may be what you always do. Fine, great. Just do that and be in it and see where it leads you, see where it takes you. So those are some of the things we wanted to say about diagnosis. Now, of course, in that chapter, we go through all the nuts and bolts as well. Wow, Hara. Those are Jeremy's hands, but this chapter, Hara, is Jan's chapter. 5 Elements is Jeremy's chapter, by the way, people. He did a lot of the work there, and it's really where he shines. But Hara is where Jan shines. Hara is his thing. He's just so good. Lena Lial is probably nodding her head here, thinking, yeah. Jan is all Hara. He's just such a solid, wonderful person in that sense. I mentioned in the beginning that he's a very highly respected Aikido teacher and practitioner. In fact, he's unique. He used to travel around the world teaching Aikido and earn his living doing that. That's absolutely unique in the whole world. I don't know anybody else doing that. So it's an exceptional person we're talking about. And his Hara connection is really, really something amazing, guys. So this chapter is about Hara individually and Hara collectively. How we connect with other people through our Hara is like the most important part for us about the Hara. Not so much Hara diagnosis, although that's very, very important. Not even so much Hara treatment, also very important. Our embodiment through our Hara and our connection through the Hara to other people, into their Hara, waking up their Hara power, giving them that stability and that trust in themselves, that ability to come into their gut power and say yes or no, and mean it, and stand there and really just not be nasty about it, not be unkind about it, be generous about it, but be very firm. I think no, or I think yes. Hara. So I think it's a great chapter, all about Jan Nevelius. So if you want to know more about Jan Nevelius, read that chapter. If you want to know more about Jeremy Halpin, read the 5 Elements chapter. I'm in there, of course, but those guys are dominating those chapters. So let's go. What else we got? Probably getting towards the end here. Yes, we are. Look, we got from here to, that is a picture of Marina, my girlfriend, and my thumbs on her forehead. And Jan took the picture. And the footsteps in the background relate to the journey of Shiatsu, the individual journeys that we're all on, the collective journey that we're all on. And that's something that really, really does interest me. I come from a huge family. We're like Catholics, so there's loads of us. And I learned to share, and I learned about the power of doing things together. And that stayed with me, that thing about family, quite important for me. So whatever I do, there's that family thing involved somewhere or other. And as we move forward in Shiatsu now, I think it's time. And those of you who joined us on Facebook streaming last night, the European Shiatsu Federation was out there last night doing a global meditation. And Mikhail, who runs everything Shiatsu, came in at the end and said, it's time, people, to to get our dignity really organized and to step out into the world and really claim our place. Now, I know that sounds a bit abstract right now. I haven't done an official higher diagnosis here. I know what you mean, Diana. It's time for us to step out, which can sound really abstract when a lot of people here are on lockdown, haven't been doing a lot of shiatsu for a while. It can seem really weird to talk about this kind of stuff. But I think very, very shortly, you're going to be seeing what I'm talking about. We're going to be entering a whole new phase of not just shiatsu, but human existence. And we have a massive part to play in that because we're already master practitioners of energy and the untouchable and the invisible. And we'll be able to take a leader role in that, not in any shouting, loudmouth kind of way, but just quietly through our behavior, through the way we handle the way that's coming and the new things that will be coming our way. Shiatsu has a huge role to play. And one of the things we wanted to say in this chapter, those footsteps point to the way forward. And the subtitle of this book from the beginning was Shiatsu Footsteps. We wanted to show that there's a way forward and that Shiatsu is a journey and it's a way, etc., the Tao, etc., etc. But with this chapter, we wanted to kind of sum up where we've been from this point and kind of ascertain where we are today when we wrote the book and where we think this is all going. And we said some fairly bold things in there, which hopefully will be coming true pretty soon. We also said things like Shiatsu doesn't actually have any limits. You can do Shiatsu in any situation you might care to think about. In fact, Marcella tells me I do it in my sleep. I'm still not sure about that, but she says so. You can do Shiatsu in a hospital. You can visit a patient and just hold their hand and use your Shiatsu sensibility, touch their invisible soul and do Shiatsu, even if the person is dying. And I can assure you I've done that and it works. You can do Shiatsu in a nursery school. You don't even have to touch the kids. You can just be sitting there with them, holding their space for them and doing that Shiatsu love thing. You can do it at a party when somebody's really, really not feeling well. I've done that as well. I helped somebody steer away an asthma attack, even though I'd only done like one term of Shiatsu lessons. That was pretty empowering. Pretty scary, but pretty empowering. You can do Shiatsu in old people's homes. I've done that too. You can do Shiatsu in prisons. I've done that as well. You can do Shiatsu in psychiatric units with the staff there. I've done that. You can do Shiatsu anywhere. You just have to modify it. But we have so much flexibility in what we do that we can actually do that. We can move in to any situation. We can have people sitting down, even standing up, of course, lying down in any position, side, back, front, etc. Be clear about the power in your hands, in your bodies, in your hara, and in your soul, about what Shiatsu grants you. It grants you enormous access to worlds within worlds. So we wanted to be really stating the case for Shiatsu moving into all sorts of areas of life, all sorts of walks of life with this chapter here. And one of them, of course, is hospitals. And that's a controversial one for some people, not for Greek people, of course. You guys have been working in hospitals for years. In Austria, they've been working in hospitals for years. In Sweden, you can forget about that at the moment. We can't do it. It's just completely impossible. But I've done it anyway, just on a ad hoc basis with certain people. Quietly, you don't have to do anything to do Shiatsu, right? It's like doing Qigong at the bus stop. You don't have to do anything, you're just doing Qigong. You don't have to do anything to meditate while you're sitting in a group of people and not really enjoying their company, just sit and meditate. So the same with Shiatsu. So be clear about that, folks. You can move Shiatsu into any situation in life, any context, any scenario, and it's always useful, it's always valuable, it always makes a contribution. And even if you can't see it immediately, you'll see it eventually. So I think that's the end of my spiel, Joanne, unless we got something else that I forgot about. Oh, that's if you want to, yeah. Are we going to put this up as a PDF somewhere?
If you'd like, yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. And then you can have a look at that if you need to.
Yeah, I will. I'll think about that and I will find lots of places to put it.
Great. And then was there anything else at the end, or was that it?
Your links.
Those are places to contact me. So once you get the PDF, feel free to use those channels. Obviously, I haven't put my phone number up, but you can probably get that from somebody who knows me.
Actually, I have everybody's email address who attended, and I can send an email out afterwards with the PDF of this. So that's the best.
Brilliant, Joanne. Thank you. That's, thinking on your feet. Brilliant.
Yeah, there we go.
So will we do a couple of minutes of question and answer and then go into some practice?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Is there something on the chat we need to attend to?
I'm just having a look at that. Martha Lopez, lovely hearing about the triple heater and pericardium influencing every phase instead of belonging to the fire. Makes my brain explode in a good way.
That's typical Martha. In a good way.
I very much liked hearing that as well. You know, it links to everything that you work on. You're working on bladder and kidney. You're like, oh yeah, but it needs a bit of triple heater in there. Yeah, very much.
There behind the knee, right?
And Catherine, if anybody has a question now for Chris, you could unmute yourself and ask Chris the question. Well, I have one then.
Okay, so, go ahead.
So I know that obviously when you wrote this book, it wasn't lockdown, and probably, you know, you didn't see, none of us saw kind of quite this lockdown coming. And when you say that shiatsu can be done in every single way with it, but a lot of the time and a lot of the talk there was very much about the physicality. We can be in hospitals, we can be at a bus stop, we can be at a party. Those are very much where we're not at the moment. We're not at bus stops and we're not with people. So what's your experience about doing shiatsu on Zoom or distance shiatsu, or just your chi experience etherically?
Great question. Something happened to me many years ago when I first came to Sweden. This is like 95, 94 even. And my very great acupuncture and Qigong martial arts teacher, Peter Yates, who passed recently, some of the people here know him, he called me up and he said, Chris, I've got a splitting headache. Can you do anything for me? And he's in Tokyo at the time and I'm in Sweden. So I just thought, well, I should be able to, shouldn't I? Tell you what, Pete, put the phone down, go and sit yourself down somewhere, I lie down and I'll see what I can do. And I did a meditation that he more or less taught me how to do it. We learned from the same teacher. I did this meditation, just channeling like whatever came up to him and just clearing the headache. And he called me back a day later and said, that just worked like a treat, cleared the headache, no problem at all. That was before the idea of distilled shiatsu was born in my mind. And then it all came back, didn't it? Very recently. Luckily, during these years, I've been doing a few distilled treatments with people, mostly with people's kids and people's friends and things like that. When they've said, oh, please, can you send a bit of chi to this person or that person? I've sat myself down and, you know, given a half an hour of attention to that person. More often than not, Joanne, I fall asleep, to be honest with you, but they'll tell me that great things happen. But this whole thing about distilled treatments really blew up, didn't it? Like about a year ago. And there was controversy about it in certain countries. I know the Greek community had a very lively dialogue about it, for example. And my own approach to that was, well, I've been doing it for years anyway, so I'll just carry on. Luckily, I stumbled over a seminar that Cliff was giving, Cliff Andrews. And I didn't intend to watch it. I just happened to be there. And it was about how to structure a distilled treatment. So I thought, brilliant. I'm going to take that. And his main point was, give yourself a break every 10 minutes and make a few notes, because otherwise you're going to forget what you did and you won't be able to tell them what it was. And then if they need to kind of, in a sense, compare their experience with yours, there's nothing tangible there to work with. So I started doing that. And then the next week, I got a call from Israel. Chris, can you start some Zoom classes for us? We're on lockdown. And this is a bunch of shiatsu therapists. So I'm like, well, I just have to teach them to do distilled treatments then, even though I'm completely unqualified and have never done it before. And we did. Amazing things started happening. And we kept doing it in different Zoom classes here and there and with different people. Some of the people online here today have actually worked with me in that way. And some pretty astounding things happen. So I want to encourage anybody who feels like they might be able to do that. Yes, you can do it. And Joanne, you've probably been doing it. So you've probably got some things to share about that.
Yeah. For me, we do it at the same time. So what I'm feeling in my body usually is what they're experiencing. So it happens and then they follow the points. And what's quite nice with Zoom is that's then recorded and then they have their personal shiatsu treatment. So that part of empowering the person, then they go away and before their next treatment, they are practicing on themselves. They're doing self shiatsu. And it's not like they don't need to be qualified to do that. They don't need to do lots of training. But that point you made about people being active in their own Like, what is it with Aikido that you can't fight with a person until the person moves towards you to have a fight with you? You cannot do something unless the energy moves towards you. So unless your client actually puts themselves in the position of wanting to receive the treatment and participate in that treatment, I think that's one of the blessings that's come out of lockdown, really has for me. And that Chi has no calendar and it has no clock. And only as human beings do we get caught into this, okay, I got to finish this by here and I've got to do this by here. Energy has no time and no calendar.
Brilliant. There's some really great tips there, people, by the way. That's fantastic work. By the way, Joanne, you're looking great.
It's the lights. It's the lights. Thanks, Chris. Now I can see here which one is your chapter, Chris?
Oh, well, let me think about that. That's a very good question. That's Marcella asked that, didn't she? Probably it's meridians. It's probably my chapter. I'm an avowed meridian nerd, Joanne, and I don't apologize for it, but I do acknowledge it. I do admit it fully. Never-ending, spectacular world that never ceases to amaze me in every single way. And I met Jeremy recently because this book came out and he wanted some copies, and I've been the one handling the whole logistics of it. So we met in this cafe, not somewhere in between where we live. And Jeremy's moved on quite a bit since we last saw each other, which is years ago. And he's been moving into this shamanic field. And he's been doing an awful lot of workshops all around the world with all sorts of really incredible shamans and healers with medicine, as they call it, all sorts of different medicinal plants. And a lot of those plants are incredibly powerful. And some of you probably know more about that than I do. But one of them had him like lying on his back. And he suddenly had a thought, and he asked the plant, the wisdom of the plant, how about meridians then? And the plant said, you want to know about meridians? Lift your arm. He lifted his arm, and it's like a zillion meridians came out of his arm. And he was like laughing his head off. He's like, we have 3 there in the classical sense. Well, 3 on the back, 3 on the front, fine. And Masanaga has whatever, and my teacher had a half dozen more, zigzagging, and Endo has curling ones around here and here and here. There are obviously infinite numbers of meridians. Even in yoga, they talk about 10,000 nadis or something like that. Isn't that right, Joanne? Something like that?
I don't know yoga so much for a long time.
Well, the Ayurvedic tradition has just equally as authentic and as long tradition as the Chinese medicine. It's a bit different, but it's really similar in essential ways, and that's one of them. The meridians never stop. And they never sleep, by the way. They're always with you doing something. Usually you don't know what the hell they're up to, but the more we get into the invisible, the more we get comfortable resting inside our invisible realms, the more they can reveal themselves to us.
Lovely, absolutely. Revelations.
Oh, Antigone, are you leaving us?
Cheerio, Antigone. Cheerio. And Diana, what can that be called then, as Shiatsu is interpreted as finger pressure? I take it, Diana, you might be talking about the chi over the ethers. I'm not sure, Diana, would you like to say more about your question? Oh. I'm not even sure which Diana it is. Hello.
Yeah, sorry, I know I was muted there. Yeah, no, it's just that if the interpretation of Shiatsu is finger pressure and you're doing Shiatsu over the ether, then you're not getting in physical contact. So can it still, I know this is only a kind of a silly question if you like, but can it still be classed as Shiatsu?
Diana, that's exactly what the controversy that was raging in Greece this time a year ago. And some people absolutely categorically said, you can't call it Shiatsu because you're not in physical contact. And it's exactly what you're pointing out here. Well, yes, and that's perfectly true, isn't it? But truth has many sides. And for me, what I do in daily life, I call it Shiatsu. So whether I'm taking out the garbage or whether I'm cleaning windows or whether I'm driving a car, it's all Shiatsu for me. So as an extension of what we do in Shiatsu, then I think yes. But you can just call it distilled treatment. You can just call it distilled ki treatment. You can call it chi treatment. There's a variety of ways of, in a sense, calling it something that makes sense to you and makes sense to the person receiving it. Now, if that person is one of your Shiatsu clients, they'll want to hear the word Shiatsu in there. But if the person is not one of your Shiatsu clients, they won't give a damn. You can call it whatever you like. I'm thinking about you. I'm praying for you. You get the point, Diana. It's what you want it to be, isn't it?
No, that's fine. It's just like if you're saying that you're I'm a horse rider, but you haven't seen a horse for years. How can you be a horse rider? You know, it's just kind of a bit of a question more than anything. It's not trying to be antagonistic or anything like that.
Oh, I get that, Diana. It's an excellent question. It's a totally justified one. But by the way, if you're a horse rider, you won't forget how to ride a horse, will you?
They do say you need to fall off a horse before you know how to stick on it again.
Yeah, and if you fall off, get straight back on, right?
Exactly.
Thanks, Diana. Thank you. Now
why don't we do a bit of practice?
Yeah,
We've got 15 minutes left, right?
That. Yeah.
And any other questions, put them on the chat, and Joanne can easily make a copy of that and send that to me, and I can make sure that some answers get out there somehow. I can even make posts about it or things like that. So all the questions that you've got, please ask them, because every question is useful in one way or another, and only you can ask that question. Don't forget, you're unique. Only you can ask that question in that way. Nobody else can do it the way you can do it. That's essential to remember, folks. Nobody can do what you can do. Nobody can do what you can do. I can't do what Joanne can do. She can't do what Diana can do. And nobody can do what Penny does, by the way. Penny's a very old friend of mine from Tibet, years ago when we were kids. So let's do some practice, folks. What I might guide you in is a very short meditation. What's VRL saying? Yeah, we've got a book. This is VRL talking to me. He's a very discreet person. I love him for that. But he's also very direct and blunt, and I love him for that too. He's asking me to tell you all that we've got a group named after the book. It's called Touching the Invisible. It's called Touching the Invisible, and VRL started it very, very kindly for me, very generously for us, for everybody, actually. And if you want to join that group, feel free to somehow get in touch with one of us, VRL, or with me, or with Joanne, or anybody who's a member, and they can invite you in. It's a private group, but everybody who's doing Shiatsu or loves Shiatsu is welcome. Treating dying clients is... Oh, that question, Lynn, is an excellent question, but it's way too big to get into here, but it's a great question to ask, and I'm really glad you put it there. Let's deal with that at another junction in time and in a more dignified way than rushing through it now. Thank you for that question. Any other questions, folks? Really, seriously. Let's sit on our mats. I'm going to show you my treatment room, a little bit more of it there. And there's my futon. Joanne, would you like to isolate spotlight my box so that people can see what I'm up to here?
Sorry, Chris, did you say something to me?
Yeah, could you spotlight my box so that people can see what I'm up to over here? There it is, perfect. So here we go, classic Shiatsu posture, right, folks? Seiza. What does Seiza mean? You ever reflected on that? It means correctly sitting. Why is it called correctly sitting? Nobody knows. But I once saw a Japanese film where these samurai were carting the emperor off to safety through the mountains, through the forests, and they were slaving under the hot sun. And they got far enough away from the city, from the attackers and the intruders, to be safe for a little while, take a rest. So they decided to take a rest. And they set the emperor's chair down, and they went over to they've been walking for hours and hours and hours carrying this guy, right? And they walk over to the glade, and they all sit down in seiza like this, and they say, kimuchi na. That means, what a great feeling in Japanese. Now, a Westerner would not think it a great feeling to sit like this, because it's really, really uncomfortable until you get used to it. Once you get used to it, it's the most comfortable position in the world. Why? Because your diaphragm is set free and your spine is elevated. You've got this great big current going up and down the back of your body. So talk about nadis and meridians, right? So this position helps you breathe much more fully and helps your meridians begin to come to life. Now, of course, the drawback is these knees and ankles things. If you're not used to it, you're going to need something underneath your bum here to keep you comfortable. If you're not comfortable sitting stairs, just sit cross-legged or with your legs, whichever way. No importance whatsoever at this point. I'm going to show you this because it's easiest for me to show you what I'm going to show you in Seiza. What I'd like you to do is take 2 breaths for yourself and just enter your body completely and really let the conversation wash off of you as if the tide is coming in, bringing waves to wash the beach. And your thoughts just bring you inside yourself and then wash you all the way out again. And the next breath comes in and washes you all the way into your core. And then the out breath washes you out again, emptying you and leaving you feeling absolutely great. And ready for a short exercise in touch, in chi, and touching your own invisible worlds. And I decided spontaneously while we were talking to do something with the triple heater and pericardium. And it's a really, really simple exercise. You can teach your clients to do this. And it's like just a multi-dimensional meditation without even needing to use the word meditation. That's the beauty of it. So what I want you to do is have a look at your wrist, right? And I want you to put 3 fingers close together at the wrist joint itself, the crease of your wrist. Place your 3 fingers right there on the wrist. And you know exactly what I'm doing, don't you? We're going to find pericardium 6. So if there's anybody here who hasn't found this point before, don't worry, I'm going to guide you right into it. 3 fingers there, and you'll notice that you've arrived at a place where there's 2 tendons, which feels kind of weird and bony and a little bit yucky for some people. In between those 2 tendons is the point we're looking for. So 3 fingers from the wrist, in between the tendons, and just rest your long finger on that point. And you can rest your arm back down on your leg again, or wherever you like. You can hold it out in front of you if you like doing that kind of thing, if you're a Qigong-y kind of person, if you like to extend meridians, wherever. Just authentically feel whatever you're doing and the way you want to do it. And we're connecting with pericardium 6. The name in Chinese is Neiguan. Naikan in Japanese, but Neiguan in Chinese, I'm more familiar with the Chinese sometimes. Ne means inner or internal. Guan means city gate. So we're talking about the city gate here that leads to the interior. Think about an old Chinese city, or any city in the world for that matter. We used to have city-states where there was a gate, a wall around the town. You see the ruins of them still to this day. And in those walls, there were always gates. There was a main gate, and there was usually side gates as well. And they were armed, they were guarded, they were locked at night, and they were opened in a controlled fashion during the day for the flow of goods and services and people and energy in and out from the city in a controlled way. But then you had access to the city, and from the city, access to the outside world. This is the gate that gives you access to the inner world. I want you now to put your thumb on that gate and just rest it there, purely relaxed, just the weight of your arm resting there, and bring that long finger instead round to the back and connect through your arm, through those 2 points. And that point there, most of you know it, of course you do. Some of you don't, but most of you do. Triple heater 5. What's the name of that point then? Well, it's called Waiguan, of course. Wai means external or outer. Guan is the same word, city gates. We have the 2 city gates here, folks. We have the gateway to the interior, and we have the gateway to the exterior. Triple heater then leading us outwards in a sense. Pericardium then leading us inwards. What's so special about these 2 points? There's layers and layers and layers of significance here. Let's take 2 more layers. These 2 points are the law points of their meridians. L-U-O, law. Law means connecting. So these points connect to something. What do they connect with? They connect with the internal organs, the heart in one case then, pericardium, the interstitial fluids in the case of the triple heater, all of the valves, all the sluice gates throughout the body where the fluids are moved from one place to another, controlling the heat, the temperature of the body, keeping it at a standard, steady 37.5 degrees where everything functions optimally. So these low points connect not only to each other, to each other's meridian. So we're linking the triple heater with the pericardium in a very, very strong fashion. We're linking them to their essential functional spheres within the body and within the spirit. So you can picture the pathways of these meridians rushing like expressways into the center of your body, into the core of your being, into the metabolism of fluids, into the heating and cooling mechanisms of your entire body, through into the heart, into the emotions, into your sense of intimacy, your ability to create intimate relationships with other people and with yourself, the ability to generate charisma, to communicate, the ability to maintain blood pressure, blood rhythm, blood circulation, blood chemistry, to keep the blood clean, keep the blood lively and full of energy and full of nutrition. All of those things we ascribe to the pericardial meridian. What else do these points do? They connect with two of the extraordinary vessels, the family of 8, which go deeper. They connect with the linking vessels, the Wei vessels, the Yin Wei Mai and the Yang Wei Mai. So we connect in an even deeper way into the pathways of the body of embryology and of the hormone system, the nerve system. The deepest parts of your being are connected here. All of the Yin meridians connected with the Yin Wei Mai. All of the Yang meridians connected with the Yang Wei Mai. A total interlocking, integrated network of energy, intelligence, and sensibility flowing through you and around you at every level, physical as well as emotional and mental, but of course also soul, spiritual energy. These are the two outer and inner gates. They are peripheral. They're right out there by the wrist. You can just briefly connect with them on the opposite side as well, just to take 3 breaths there as well. So we've got a little bit of flow on both sides of the body, flowing into the center. From periphery towards the core is what we're looking for here. Allow your breath to come and go easily, smoothly, and freely. No need to demand any special kind of breathing. Let the breathing do what it needs to do in this moment. Your breath knows, your breath is intelligent, your breath has a sense of what this moment needs for you. Follow your breath, trust your breath. Set your breath free. It will guide you to amazing places within yourself and out in the world as well. It will guide you through situations that you never thought you could navigate properly. This is the periphery, folks, and if we want to just very briefly stimulate those meridians once more, we can open up the arms to 45 degrees and just think about your long finger and pulse your energy out, your awareness out to the tip of your long finger, through your palm, through the wrist, through the lower part of the arm where those tendons are, and all the way back up to the pectoral area where, ladies, the breasts are, and gentlemen, the pectoral muscles are, and feed that energy into the central area of the core. You want to go into the yang aspect. This is the yin, of course, with the pericardium. The yang aspect is the triple heater. Send your hands across your body and extend from the shoulders and the shoulder blades out to your ring finger, the finger next to your little finger. Just bring your awareness to the ring finger and then feed that awareness up and down the line you've created from the ring finger to the shoulder. And that will be the triple heater meridian. Through the wrist, through the back of the hand, through the lower part of the arm, up through the elbow, up into the shoulder, and then up towards the ears, eyes, and then from there, through the nervous system, through the hormonal system, throughout the rest of your body and mind. Relax your arms back into a comfortable position. My lumbar spine just adjusted spontaneously, by the way. That's the kind of thing that happens when you work with meridians and they just give you little gifts like that. We're going to go from the periphery into the core now. So what I want you to do is locate the breastbone. And I want you to measure from the top of your breastbone, there's a little hollow there at your throat. And at the tip of your breastbone below, there's a little piece of what we call cartilage or gristle bone. And the Chinese have a great name for that, by the way, the dove's tail magic. 2/3 of the way down, you'll find a place called the chest center. It's the point called Ren 17 or CD17, conception 17. It's called Shandong. No, Shandong, what am I talking about? Shanzhong. It means chest center. It's a great name for this point because it really opens up the chest center. And most of you will find yourself holding this point if you're ever feeling slightly distressed or worried or anxious about anything. Your fingers will come to this point naturally anyway. So now we're doing it consciously. We're doing it in a sort of preventive sense, in a sort of therapeutic sense, to bring awareness here when we're feeling good, feeling really good. Bringing your mind to this area, bringing your heart to this area, bringing your sense, your sensibility, your ki, your attention, and your physical awareness to this point. And this is the central gathering point of the pericardium meridian. So we're bringing the pericardium in to its central gathering point now. These are called mu points, right, in Chinese? Ball points in Japanese. You've all learned them in your classes. And some of you might have forgotten them already. Fair enough. They're useful in so many ways. A lot of people use them as purely diagnostic points. Not me. I use them as treatment points. Gathering points is what they are. The mu and the bo. In Japanese, that means gathering or accumulating. So you can touch the chi of that meridian in a central place here, gather it, and then direct it somewhere else, or just be informed by it as diagnosis. We're going to drop down now to the navel. So find your belly button, wherever that might be. It's at the level of the waist, by the way, there's a clue. And you're going to use 3 fingers again, and place the 3 fingers underneath the navel, directly underneath. And where your fingers finish is another excellent point, and it's called Sherman. It's the triple heater mu point, or the bow point. It is the point that the Chinese called Sherman, which means stone gate. It's the gathering point for the triple heater, the central accumulation point for the triple heater. So if we link those 2 points together now, folks, pericardium, triple heater, again, and just allow those points to breathe into each other, to connect and fully influence each other, merge into each other, and entrain with each other. Then you'll begin to get the synergistic effect of these 2 mighty linking meridians together in the body. Let's take a few breaths there to wash in and to wash out of that experience. Wash into the very center of it, and then wash out into the periphery of it. If your fingers are getting a little bit sore, or the points feel a little bit like pointed at, just bring your palms into the picture and sit with your palms very, very comfortably resting on those 2 areas. And most of you will be aware that we've moved straight into another exercise, which is the 3 dantian. You're holding the lower dantian, you're holding the middle dantian now. Why don't we just top it off now with the upper dantian, the 3rd eye, to bring one of your fingers up to touch the 3rd eye now. And rest and bathe in the light you generated. Feel yourself enveloped by the light of your own spirit. Connect into the group with me, of course, with Joanne, and everybody else who's joined us this evening for this exploration, this little journey together. Connect into the communal key field that we're creating. Find out where that might lead you, what it might reveal to you, what questions it might ask you, what kind of directions it might point you in, what ideas it might evoke, what memories it might remind you of. As you drop your hand back down to your heart, back down to the chest center, back down to the lower dantian, to the lower jing center. Rest in the world, the 3 dantian and triple heater and pericardium together. Rest in your field, feel your strength, feel your power, feel your fluidity, feel your complexity. Even as you breathe and are aware of the simplicity of your existence, just breathing in, breathing out. Allow all of those things to coexist, multi-leveled, multi-layered. Many, many things can be going on at the same time for you, in you and around you, which you're part of. Some of them now, some of them before, some of them later. Some of them in the physical dimension, some of them in completely invisible dimensions, but nonetheless available, nonetheless completely reachable and accessible for you when you begin to tune in. Let's finish this little exercise here by extending a huge heartfelt thanks to Joanne for setting this up, for making the effort, and for connecting us this evening. And I'm going to come back to my screen just for a moment for a little bit of visual contact. So there's an exercise for you folks. It's on the recording. If you forget any part of it, it's right there for you. And probably you can remember every single part of it because it's not difficult, very, very simple. And use that whenever you like, whenever you feel remotely stressed or split into different parts, bring it all back into one integrated field. She's back.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Really, really excellent, really excellent. And there must be something in the chi field, because this morning, you know, I have a chi flow group, and this morning we did the heart protector 6 triple heater 5 stimulating points. So there's something really in the chi field for those 2 points, and I could really feel it myself about getting that sense of who you are in relation to the environment, and feeling very fluid. I do love the idea of the triple heater being minister of dikes and drainage. Just should use those words more and more. Dikes and drainage. Just, I think it's just love the language. And thank you so much for this evening, Chris. I'm going to invite a last few questions because it is just gone 9 o'clock now. So not to tire everybody out, especially Chris. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving your time and coming here. And thank you very much for writing the book, because, you know, the perseverance and the dedication that it takes, and the belief, you know, there's so many ups and downs. The road itself takes a lot of kind of courage to really put yourself out there, your head above the parapet, and really kind of say, this I think is really worth something. And I'm really glad that you stuck with it and you did it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to invite a last few questions. Diana saying thank you. If you want, you can unmute yourself and we can hear your voice. Hi, Grace.
It was a good evening this evening, so thank you for that. I'm glad I took part, and I know my connection is a little bit dodgy, so unfortunately I missed a little bit the odd occasion, but anyway, it was a good night, so thank you all.
Thanks, Diana. Thank you. I hear somebody else was trying to come in with a question as well.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to ask Chris, Chris, did you have any interesting dreams after the meditation last night?
Hang on, Chris, you're unmuted. You're muted for some reason. You seem to have...
Mute yourself.
There you go.
There we are. So Uta, was it Uta asked that question?
No, that was Lynn.
Lynn. Thanks, Lynn. Great question. You know, I was yawning my head off in the car on the way home yesterday, like serious lion yawns, and those kind of almost jaw-breaking yawns. So I think something released out of me actually more than anything else. And I slept as deeply as I've done for weeks and weeks and months actually. So not really dreams, but a deep kind of rest, which I really needed. I think it was a lot of build up to that event, and this one as well, by the way. And there'll be more coming up, no doubt about that. Cliff's going to be putting me through my paces tomorrow, so he's not quite as kind as Joanne is, so that'll be a bit of a test.
So where are you talking tomorrow?
No, tomorrow is the rehearsal. That's Cliff for you. You do a rehearsal with Cliff. You don't get to just be on live with Cliff.
And Cliff is?
Cliff Andrews.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So next Tuesday, we'll be doing a live thing with him on his whatever platform he's got. And I'll make sure I post that so everybody who's interested can join us on that. Folks, it'll be more of the same. So, I mean, you've heard it once, you've heard it 1,000 times, right? But there'll always be a new angle. And I never say the same thing exactly twice. I promise.
Exactly. And people, I find you can say the same thing twice, but I'm different. So I hear it differently anyway. So,
Ain't that the truth?
Carmen saying thank you in the Netherlands. It's 1 hour later. Goodness me. Yes, off to bed with you. All
Same
right,
here in
good
Sweden,
girl.
by the way.
Okay. So anybody got a last question they want to put to Chris?
I
Hunky
noticed that
dory.
VRL has put the link to our group there on the chat. If you scroll back a little bit, folks, you'll see he's put up the link to the Facebook private group, Touching the Invisible. There's the link. So you could kind of invite yourself in a sense, and we'll let you in, that kind of thing. Right, VRL? No, he's nodding, so that must be correct.
Oh, I see that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see that.
Cheers, man. Amazing guy, VRL. Really, such a great voice in Shiatsu community. Hats off, buddy. Great work.
Brilliant. Now, just to, we'll be having also the next Shiatsu Society will be actually, funnily enough, around working with death and loss in Shiatsu with Tamsin. So I'm not sure when that'll be. That'll probably be in 2 months' time. If you can't wait that much, Tamsin is on Wednesday night going to be talking in Chi Flow with Joe. So if you want, you can get tickets for that one. Okay, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Sending you lots of chi across the ethers. Lots of chi and lots of love. Take it easy and go with chi. Thanks, Chris. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanne. Thanks, everybody.